Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the New Horizon and watched the stars move past the viewing window. The massive colony ship had been traveling through space for 6 months now, carrying 50,000 people toward their new home in the Kepler 442 system. Jake felt proud every time he looked at the sleeping pods where families dreamed of the world they would build together. These people had left Earth behind to start fresh on a planet that might give their children a better future. Dr. Lisa Hayes walked up to Jake with a worried look on her face. She was the ship's science officer, and one of the smartest people Jake had ever met. Lisa held a datapad in her hands and kept looking at the numbers on the screen. Something was bothering her, and Jake could tell by the way she bit her lip when she was thinking hard about a problem. "Captain, we need to talk about these readings I've been getting," Lisa said quietly. She handed Jake the datapad and pointed to several energy signatures that showed up on their long-range sensors. "These are coming from the Vega system, about 3 light-years from our current position. The patterns don't match anything natural I've ever seen." Jake looked at the data and tried to understand what Lisa was showing him. The energy readings were strong and seemed to follow patterns that suggested intelligent control. Someone or something was using a lot of power in that system and doing it in ways that nature never would. Jake felt his stomach tighten as he realized what this might mean. "You think we're looking at aliens?" Jake said. It wasn't really a question because both he and Lisa knew that was exactly what they were seeing. Humanity had always wondered if they were alone in the universe, and now they had their answer. They were not alone, and their new neighbors had technology that could produce energy signatures visible from 3 light-years away. Ben Carter, the ship's communications officer, looked up from his station when he heard Jake and Lisa talking. Ben was young but very good at his job, and he had been monitoring all frequencies for any signs of intelligent signals since the day they left Earth. He had found nothing but empty space until now. "Should I try to make contact, Captain?" Ben asked. His fingers were already moving over his controls, ready to send humanity's first message to an alien civilization. Jake could see the excitement in Ben's eyes, but he also saw the fear that came with not knowing what might answer back. Jake thought carefully before answering. Making contact with aliens could be the most important moment in human history, or it could be the last mistake humanity ever made. The energy readings showed that these aliens had technology far beyond anything humans had built. If they were friendly, this could be wonderful. If they were not friendly, the New Horizon and everyone on it could be in terrible danger. "Send a basic greeting," Jake decided. "Keep it simple and peaceful. Let them know we're just passing through their area and don't want any trouble." Ben nodded and began working on the message. He used simple mathematical concepts and basic symbols that any intelligent species should be able to understand. The message explained that humans were peaceful travelers looking for a new home and hoped to be friends with any life they met among the stars. They sent the message and waited. Hours passed with no response. Ben tried different frequencies and even sent the message again in case the aliens hadn't received it the first time. Still nothing came back from the Vega system. The aliens were either not interested in talking to humans, or they had decided that humans weren't worth their time. Maybe they just liked to keep to themselves, Lisa suggested. A lot of species might prefer isolation once they develop space travel. They might see other civilizations as potential threats or problems they don't want to deal with. Jake hoped that was true. The idea of aliens who minded their own business seemed much better than aliens who might see humans as enemies or food. He decided to log the contact attempt and continue toward Kepler 442 as planned. The New Horizon had people depending on reaching their new home, and Jake wasn't going to let alien silence stop them from completing their mission. What Jake and his crew didn't know was that they were being watched very carefully. Far away in the Vega system, Fleet Commander Vextar of the Zephyrian Empire studied the human ship through his advanced sensors. The Zephyrians had been watching the New Horizon since it entered their detection range, and Vextar found the primitive vessel quite amusing. The humans had basic faster-than-light travel, but their ship showed no signs of military weapons or proper defensive shields. They appeared to be exactly what their message claimed, peaceful colonists looking for a new home. Vextar had seen many species like this over the years, and they all followed the same pattern when they encountered the Zephyrian Empire. They ran away as fast as their primitive engines could carry them. Vextar marked the humans in his database as Category 3, peaceful isolationists, and then forgot about them. He had more important things to worry about than one small colony ship full of harmless primitives. The Zephyrian Empire was preparing for their largest military campaign in decades, and Vextar was going to lead the attack that would bring 4 entire star systems under Zephyrian control. The target was the Altair Confederacy, a peaceful alliance of 4 different alien species, known throughout the galaxy for their advanced technology and rich mineral worlds. The Altair species had made the mistake of refusing to pay tribute to the Zephyrian Empire, and now they would learn what happened to those who defied Zephyrian power. Vextar looked at the battle plans one more time and smiled. The Altair Confederacy had defensive fleets, but they were built for exploration and research, not for real war. The Zephyrians had been perfecting the art of conquest for over a century, and no peaceful species had ever been able to stand against them for long. In a few weeks, the Zephyrian fleet would begin their attack on Altair space. Vextar expected the campaign to be over quickly with minimal losses to his forces. The Altair species would either surrender and accept Zephyrian rule, or they would be destroyed as an example to other species who might think about defying the Empire. The human colony ship would probably be somewhere near Altair space when the attack began, but Vextar wasn't worried about that. In his experience, primitive species always fled when they saw real military power in action. The humans would take one look at the Zephyrian war fleet and run back to whatever small corner of space they had come from. Vextar had conquered 17 star systems using this same approach, and he saw no reason why the 18th would be any different. The humans were just another weak species that would learn to fear Zephyrian might, assuming they were smart enough to run away when the shooting started. 3 months had passed since the New Horizon left the area where they first detected alien signals. Captain Jake Morrison thought they had put that strange encounter behind them, but Dr. Lisa Hayes had continued monitoring long-range sensors for any signs of alien activity. What she found made her stomach feel sick with worry. "Captain, you need to see this right away," Lisa called from her science station. Her voice was tight with fear, and Jake could tell something terrible was happening. He walked over to her station and looked at the sensor displays that showed massive energy discharges coming from the direction of the Altair star system. The readings were unlike anything Lisa had ever seen before. Enormous amounts of energy were being released in patterns that could only mean one thing: weapons fire on a scale that boggled the human mind. Someone was fighting a war in space, and the weapons being used were powerful enough to destroy entire cities with single shots. Ryan Brooks, the ship's chief engineer, came over to look at the sensor data. Ryan was a practical man who understood energy systems better than anyone else on the ship. When he saw the readings, his face went pale and he shook his head in disbelief. "Those energy signatures are off the charts," Ryan said quietly. "Whatever weapons are producing those discharges could probably crack a planet in half if they wanted to. This isn't just a war, Captain. This is complete destruction on an industrial scale." Navigation Officer Kate Sullivan was monitoring the ship's position and course when she noticed something that made the situation even worse. The New Horizon was heading directly toward the area where the battle was taking place. At their current speed and trajectory, they would arrive at the edge of the combat zone in just over 2 weeks. "Captain, we're going to have front row seats for whatever is happening over there," Kate reported. "Should I plot a course change to avoid the area? We could add a few months to our journey, but we'd be much safer if we stayed away from whatever is causing those energy discharges." Before Jake could answer, Communications Officer Ben Carter suddenly straightened up at his station. He had been trying to intercept any signals from the battle area, hoping to learn more about what was happening. What he found made him feel sick to his stomach. "I'm picking up partial transmissions from the combat zone," Ben said, his voice shaking slightly. "The signals are badly damaged by interference, but I can make out enough to understand what's happening. Someone is asking for help with civilian evacuations. They're begging any ships in the area to assist with rescuing non-combatants from the war zone." Ben played the intercepted transmission over the bridge speakers. The voice was clearly alien, speaking in a language that the ship's computers were still trying to translate. But even without understanding the words, everyone on the bridge could hear the desperation and fear in the speaker's voice. Someone was dying out there, and they were calling for help from anyone who might be listening. Dr. Sam Rodriguez, the ship's chief medical officer, had been listening from his position near the medical bay. Sam was a good doctor and a better man, and he couldn't stand the idea of people suffering when he might be able to help them. He walked onto the bridge with a determined look on his face. "Captain, we have to do something. Sam said firmly. Our cargo holds could carry thousands of refugees if we converted them for life support. We have medical supplies and equipment that could save lives. We can't just fly past while people are dying. Security Chief Tony Walsh heard Sam's suggestion and immediately shook his head. Tony's job was to keep the ship and everyone on it safe, and he took that responsibility very seriously. The idea of flying into a war zone made him extremely nervous. With respect, Doctor, we have 50,000 colonists depending on us to get them safely to their new home, Tony said. We don't know anything about this conflict or who the good guys are supposed to be. For all we know, the people asking for help might be the ones who started the war in the first place. The argument that followed was the most intense debate Jake had ever witnessed among his senior staff. Half the officers wanted to help the unknown aliens, while the other half insisted their duty was to protect the human colonists aboard their ship. The discussion went on for hours as they tried to decide what the right thing to do might be. Everything changed when Ben received a direct transmission that cut through all the interference and static. The signal was crystal clear, as if someone had used their last bit of power to send a message that no one could ignore. What they saw on the main screen made everyone on the bridge fall silent. The transmission showed an alien mother holding her injured child in her arms. She was clearly one of the civilians caught in the middle of the war, and her world was burning around her. The alien didn't know if anyone was listening to her message, but she wanted someone in the galaxy to know that her people had existed. My name is Kira, the alien woman said through the ship's translation system. My people are called the Altair, and we have lived in peace for 3,000 years. We built cities where our children could learn and grow. We explored space to find new friends among the stars. We shared our knowledge with anyone who asked for it. The image showed buildings burning in the background while alien families ran for their lives. Military vessels rained destruction from the sky while civilian ships tried desperately to escape the planet. Kira held her injured child closer and continued speaking directly to the camera. I don't know who is listening to this message, but I want you to remember us. We lived, we loved, and we dreamed of a galaxy where different species could be friends. Now our worlds are burning and our children are dying, and no one is coming to help us. The Zephyrians say we must surrender or be destroyed, but we cannot live as slaves. The transmission began breaking up as explosions got closer to Kira's location. She kissed her child's forehead and looked directly into the camera one last time. Please remember that we tried to be good neighbors to everyone. We never hurt anyone, and we always tried to help those in need. I hope someone out there will be braver than we were. The signal cut to static as orbital bombardment struck the area where Kira had been broadcasting. The bridge of the New Horizon was completely quiet for several minutes as everyone tried to process what they had just witnessed. They had seen the face of innocent people being slaughtered, and they could no longer pretend this was someone else's problem. Captain Jake Morrison looked around at his officers and saw his own feelings reflected in their faces. They were angry, sad, and determined all at the same time. The vote that followed was unanimous. Every single officer agreed that they had to change course and try to help the Altair people, even if it meant putting their own lives at risk. Kate, plot a course for Altair Prime, Jake ordered. Maximum speed. Lisa, I want you to start working on ways to convert our mining equipment into something more useful for a rescue operation. Ryan, push the engines as hard as you can without breaking them. We're going to save as many Altair civilians as possible. Dr. Rodriguez immediately began preparing the medical bay for alien patients, while Tony Walsh started organizing security teams for potential rescue operations. Everyone on the ship knew they were probably flying toward their deaths, but none of them could live with themselves if they did nothing while innocent people were being murdered. Far away in Zephyrian space, Fleet Commander Vextar was informed that the human colony ship had changed course toward the battle zone. He laughed out loud when he heard the news. The primitive humans were either incredibly brave or incredibly stupid, and either way they would soon join the Altair species in extinction. Vextar wasn't worried about one small colony ship interfering with his conquest. His fleet had enough firepower to destroy 100 human vessels without breaking formation. If the humans wanted to die alongside the Altair species, that was their choice to make. The New Horizon flew through space at maximum speed, racing toward a war zone where they would be outgunned, outnumbered, and completely out of their depth. But Captain Morrison and his crew had made their decision, and they were going to stick with it no matter what happened next. The New Horizon dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the Altair system and immediately found themselves in the middle of hell. Altair Prime, once a beautiful world covered with crystal cities and peaceful settlements, was now burning under constant bombardment from Zephyrian warships. Captain Jake Morrison watched in horror as massive alien vessels rained destruction on the planet, below while smaller patrol ships hunted down, fleeing civilian craft like predators chasing wounded prey. Dr. Lisa Hayes worked frantically at her science station, trying to count the enemy forces arrayed against them. The numbers made her feel sick to her stomach. The Zephyrian fleet consisted of over 200 military vessels, including massive battleships that could probably destroy the New Horizon with a single shot. Against this overwhelming force, the humans had one converted colony ship with no weapons, no shields, and no military training. "This is insane," Security Chief Tony Walsh muttered as he watched Zephyrian fighters strafe a group of Altair evacuation ships. "We're like a fishing boat trying to fight a navy. They'll blow us apart the second they notice us." But Captain Morrison had been thinking about their situation during the long journey to Altair space, and he had realized something important. The Zephyrians didn't consider the New Horizon a threat because they had no reason to see a colony ship as dangerous. This gave the humans their only advantage, the element of surprise. "Lisa, what did you find out about converting our equipment?" Jake asked. During their journey to the war zone, Dr. Hayes had been working on ways to turn their mining and construction tools into improvised weapons. The results were crude but potentially effective. The mining lasers can be recalibrated to cut through ship hulls instead of asteroid rock, Lisa explained. Our cargo manipulator arms can launch anything we load into them, including explosive charges made from mining equipment. The ore processors can manufacture simple bombs from raw materials we collected during our journey. Chief Engineer Ryan Brooks had been working with Lisa to implement these modifications. Ryan was a practical man who understood that desperate times called for creative solutions. He had managed to turn their peaceful colony ship into something that might actually be able to fight back against military vessels. "The modifications are rough, but they should work," Ryan reported. "We're basically turning every piece of industrial equipment on this ship into a weapon. It's not pretty and it's not sophisticated, but it might be enough to surprise them." Their first target was a Zephyrian supply convoy that was moving slowly through the asteroid field surrounding Altair Prime. The enemy ships were loaded with ammunition and fuel for the main battle fleet, making them perfect targets for a hit-and-run attack. Jake ordered the New Horizon to hide among the asteroids and wait for the convoy to pass within range. When the Zephyrian ships came close enough, the humans struck with everything they had. Mining lasers cut through supply ship hulls like hot knives through butter, while improvised missiles created massive explosions that lit up the darkness of space. The attack lasted less than 10 minutes, but when it was over, 3 Zephyrian supply ships were floating dead in space. The most important part of the attack wasn't the destruction they caused, but the equipment they managed to steal. Security Chief Walsh led boarding parties using construction mechs as improvised armor, and they captured advanced shield generators and weapon systems from the disabled ships. Ryan immediately began installing this alien technology onto the New Horizon. "This changes everything," Ryan said excitedly, as he worked to integrate Zephyrian shields into their ship's systems. "With proper defensive screens, we might actually survive more than one engagement with their military vessels." Dr. Rodriguez had set up emergency medical stations throughout the ship to treat rescued Altair civilians. The first refugees they brought aboard were in terrible condition, suffering from injuries caused by orbital bombardment and the stress of watching their world burn. Sam worked day and night to learn Altair biology well enough to provide effective medical care. "Their blood chemistry is different from ours, but not impossibly so," Sam explained to Jake. "I can treat their injuries and diseases with modified versions of our medical supplies. The important thing is that we're saving lives, Captain. Every person we pull off those burning ships is someone who will live to see their people rebuild." The Zephyrians were initially confused by the hit-and-run attacks that seemed to come from nowhere. Their sensors showed only a lightly armed colony ship in the area, but somehow this primitive vessel was inflicting serious damage on their supply lines. Fleet Commander Vextar became increasingly frustrated as his subordinates reported impossible losses to what they described as mining equipment and construction tools, navigation. Officer Kate Sullivan discovered something that changed the entire nature of their mission. The Zephyrians had been jamming all communications in the system, to prevent the Altair species from calling for help. Using the New Horizons' powerful deep space transmitters, Kate found a way to break through the jamming and broadcast to the entire galaxy. "We can show everyone what's really happening here," Kate explained to Captain Morrison. "The Zephyrians have been hiding their genocide from the galactic community, but we can change that. If people throughout space see what's being done to the Altair Confederacy, maybe someone else will come to help." The transmission that followed shocked the civilized galaxy. For the first time, species throughout known space saw real footage of the Zephyrian Empire's brutal conquest methods. They watched Altair children fleeing burning cities while Zephyrian warships targeted civilian evacuation centers. They saw families torn apart by orbital bombardment and peaceful settlements turned into smoking ruins. Ben Carter, the communications officer, made sure the transmission reached every major world and space station in the galaxy. The footage spread through the galactic communication network like wildfire, showing species that had always minded their own business what happened when evil was allowed to operate without interference. The humans continued their guerrilla campaign against the Zephyrian fleet, using tactics that Jake remembered from Earth's military history. They struck fast and disappeared before the enemy could respond, always hitting targets that would cause maximum disruption to the invasion. Supply convoys, communication relays, and isolated patrol ships all became victims of human ingenuity and determination. But their success came at a price. The New Horizon was taking damage from each engagement, and their improvised weapons were wearing out from constant use. They had saved thousands of Altair civilians, but tens of thousands more were still trapped on the burning worlds below. Jake knew they couldn't keep this up much longer. The end came when Fleet Commander Vextar finally lost patience with the human nuisance. He recalled his scattered forces and prepared to obliterate the New Horizon with his entire battle fleet. Over 100 Zephyrian warships formed up in attack formation, ready to end the humans' interference once and for all. "They're coming at us with everything they have," Lisa reported from her sensor station. "I count 123 military vessels, including their flagship. We've done all we can, Captain, but I don't see how we can survive what's coming." Jake looked around the bridge at his officers and crew. They had fought harder and accomplished more than anyone had thought possible. But now they were facing the reality of their situation. One colony ship, no matter how clever its crew, couldn't stand against an entire military fleet designed for conquest. Tony Walsh was preparing the ship's defenses for their final battle when something impossible happened. New contacts appeared on the sensor screens, dropping out of hyperspace directly between the New Horizon and the approaching Zephyrian fleet. The signatures were small but fast, and they were broadcasting human identification codes. "Captain," Ben Carter called out in amazement, "I'm receiving a transmission from the lead ship. They're identifying themselves as the Earth Defense Fleet, and they're ordering the Zephyrians to withdraw from Altair space immediately." Jake couldn't believe what he was hearing. Earth was months away at maximum speed, so how could human military ships be arriving at exactly the right moment? He realized that their transmission to the galaxy must have reached Earth as well, and somehow the government had decided to send help. "How many ships?" Jake asked, hardly daring to hope that Earth might have sent enough force to make a difference against the massive Zephyrian fleet. Kate checked her sensors and announced the number that made everyone on the bridge hold their breath. 12 ships, Captain. 12 human warships just dropped out of hyperspace, and they're moving to engage the entire Zephyrian battle fleet. The odds were still impossible. 12 ships against over 100 should have been a massacre, but these weren't colony ships or converted freighters. These were pure military vessels built by Earth's finest engineers and crewed by people who had trained their entire lives for this moment. Fleet Commander Vextar watched the approaching human warships with amusement that quickly turned to confusion, then to fear, and finally to outright panic as he realized that everything he thought he knew about human military capability was completely wrong. Admiral Patricia Stone stood in the command center of Earth's military headquarters and watched the footage from Altair Prime for the third time. The images of burning cities and fleeing families reminded her of historical accounts from Earth's own dark periods, when stronger nations had crushed weaker ones simply because they could. The sight of Altair children running from orbital bombardment made her jaw clench. With anger that surprised her with its intensity, the transmission from the New Horizon had reached Earth during the monthly Colonial Council meeting. where representatives from all human settlements discussed policy for their growing presence in space. The footage of Zephyrian atrocities had stunned the council members into silence, followed by heated arguments about how humanity should respond to genocide happening far from Earth. Some council members argued that humanity was too small and weak to interfere in galactic conflicts. They pointed out that Earth had only 12 military ships, a tiny force compared to the massive fleets that other species maintained. Getting involved in alien wars could make enemies that humanity couldn't afford to fight, but Admiral Stone had spent her entire career preparing for the day when Earth might need to project military power beyond their own solar system. The 12 ships under her command were small in number, but they represented the cutting edge of human technology and tactical thinking. Each vessel incorporated breakthrough advances in quantum computing, adaptive artificial intelligence, and weapons systems designed by a species that had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare. The footage shows clear evidence of genocide against a peaceful civilian population. Admiral Stone told the Colonial Council, "If we do nothing while watching innocent people being slaughtered, what does that say about who we are as a species? Every day we delay means more Altair families die while we debate whether their lives are worth protecting." The debate that followed was intense but brief. The images of Altair civilians begging for help had affected every council member, regardless of their political positions. When the vote was taken, authorization for military intervention passed by a wide margin. Admiral Stone received orders to deploy Earth's entire fleet to Altair space with the goal of, stopping Zephyrian genocide operations. Commander Lisa Parks of the battleship Retribution received the deployment orders while her ship was conducting training exercises near Mars. Lisa had been expecting this moment for years, knowing that eventually Earth would face a situation where military force was the only option. She had studied every major space battle in recorded history and trained her crews to handle opponents with superior numbers or technology. "All ships. This is Admiral Stone," came the transmission to the fleet. "We are deploying to the Altair system to assist human colonists and prevent ongoing genocide operations. Our mission is to force Zephyrian withdrawal from Altair space and establish a protective presence until the situation stabilizes." The Earth fleet consisted of 12 ships that represented different approaches to space combat. Fast destroyers designed for hit-and-run attacks worked alongside heavy cruisers, built to absorb punishment while delivering devastating firepower. Electronic warfare vessels carried systems designed to disrupt enemy communications and targeting, while support ships provided logistics and medical assistance for extended operations. What made the human fleet truly dangerous wasn't just their technology, but their tactical doctrine. Earth's military planners had studied thousands of years of human warfare and incorporated lessons learned from every major conflict in their species' history. They understood that superior technology meant nothing without superior strategy, and they had developed tactics that could turn enemy advantages into weaknesses. The journey to Altair space took the Earth fleet 2 weeks at maximum speed, pushing their engines to performance levels that would have been impossible for older ship designs. During the journey, Admiral Stone worked with her fleet commanders to develop a battle plan that would maximize their chances of success against overwhelming odds. The Zephyrians have numerical superiority, but they've never faced opponents who fight like humans, Admiral Stone explained during a fleet-wide briefing. Their tactics are designed to overwhelm peaceful species who don't understand real warfare. "We're going to show them what happens when they pick a fight with people who have been perfecting the art of combat for millennia." The Earth fleet arrived at Altair, prime just as Fleet Commander Vextar was beginning his final assault on the New Horizon. Captain Morrison's battered colony ship was running on emergency power, their improvised weapons nearly depleted, when 12 sleek human warships dropped out of hyperspace. Directly between them and the Zephyrian battle, Fleet Commander Parks took one look at the tactical situation and immediately understood what had been happening. The colony ship had been fighting a guerrilla campaign against impossible odds, using mining equipment and construction tools to battle a professional military fleet. The courage required for such actions impressed her, but now it was time for real warships to take over the fight. "Zephyrian fleet, this is Commander Lisa Parks of the Earth Defense Force." Lisa broadcast on all frequencies. You are ordered to cease hostilities against civilian populations and withdraw from Altair space immediately. Failure to comply will result in the destruction of your military forces. Fleet Commander Vexitar received the human transmission with disbelief that quickly turned to laughter. 12 primitive ships against his battle fleet of over 100 vessels seemed like a joke, rather than a serious threat. He had conquered 17 star systems using overwhelming force, and he saw no reason why these humans should be treated any differently than previous opponents. Human vessels, you are vastly outnumbered and outgunned, Vexitar replied. Withdraw immediately or share the fate of the Altair species. This is your only warning. The battle that followed shocked both the Zephyrians and the watching galaxy. The Earth ships moved with precision that defied belief, their adaptive AI systems analyzing Zephyrian tactics in real time and developing countermeasures faster than organic minds could process. What looked like 12 ships behaving independently was actually a single coordinated organism that could adapt to any threat. Human weapons technology proved to be completely different from anything the Zephyrians had encountered before. Rather than massive energy cannons that delivered raw destructive power, human ships used targeted quantum disruptors that turned enemy shields against their own vessels. Instead of heavy armor designed to absorb damage, they employed adaptive metamaterials that restructured themselves to deflect incoming attacks. Commander Parks demonstrated why humans had spent so long fighting each other by implementing tactical doctrines that incorporated thousands of years of strategic evolution. Zephyrian battle formations designed to overwhelm static opponents found themselves scattered by coordinated attacks that struck from multiple directions simultaneously. The electronic warfare capabilities of the human fleet proved devastating to Zephyrian command and control systems. Enemy communications were jammed while human ships shared targeting data through quantum encrypted networks that couldn't be intercepted or disrupted. Zephyrian commanders found themselves isolated from their fleets, while human forces coordinated attacks with mathematical precision. Fleet Commander Vexitar watched his overwhelming numerical advantage become meaningless as human ships demonstrated tactical superiority that he couldn't understand or counter. Zephyrian vessels designed for straightforward combat found themselves outmaneuvered by opponents who seemed to predict their every move before they made it. But the humans weren't interested in a prolonged battle that would result in unnecessary casualties on both sides. Admiral Stone had given specific orders to end the engagement as quickly as possible while demonstrating overwhelming superiority that would prevent future conflicts. Commander Parks opened a direct communication channel to Fleet Commander Vexitar with a message that was both simple and terrifying in its implications. Zephyrian Commander, you have 60 seconds to order your fleet to withdraw from Altair space. If you refuse, we will demonstrate why humans are the only species to survive multiple extinction-level events on their homeworld. The threat wasn't empty bluster, and Vexitar could see proof of human capabilities in the wreckage of his own ships floating around him. In less than 30 minutes, 12 human vessels had completely destroyed the combat effectiveness of his entire battle fleet without sustaining significant damage themselves. For the first time in his military career, Fleet Commander Vexitar found himself forced to retreat from a weaker opponent. The Zephyrian Empire, which had built its reputation on never backing down from inferior forces, was abandoning its conquest because a handful of human ships had proven that numerical superiority meant nothing against tactical brilliance and superior technology. All Zephyrian vessels, withdraw to the outer system immediately, Vexitar ordered through gritted teeth. His military career was probably over, but at least he would live to report back to his superiors about this new threat that had appeared in their region of space. The human victory at Altair Prime sent shockwaves throughout the galaxy of species that had never interfered in each other's conflicts. Fleet Commander Vexitar stood in his command center and watched his battle fleet retreat from Altair space in complete defeat. The most powerful military force the Zephyrian Empire had ever assembled was limping away from a handful of human ships that had appeared from nowhere and demonstrated tactical superiority that defied everything Vexitar thought he knew about space warfare. The Mengso retreat was orderly but humiliating. Zephyrian vessels that had conquered 17 star systems were now fleeing from 12 human warships that had turned their overwhelming numerical advantage into a meaningless statistic. Vextar knew his military career was over, but that seemed insignificant compared to the larger implications of what had just happened. For over a century, the Zephyrian Empire had built its power on a simple principle. Stronger species conquered weaker ones, and everyone else minded their own business to avoid becoming targets. The galactic community had accepted this arrangement because interfering in other people's conflicts was dangerous and expensive. Species looked the other way when genocide happened because getting involved might make them the next victims. But the humans had shattered that paradigm by risking everything for people they had never met before. A single colony ship had seen the Altair Confederacy being destroyed and decided that someone else's freedom was worth fighting for, regardless of the personal cost. When Earth learned about the genocide, they had sent their entire military fleet to stop it. Admiral Patricia Stone established a permanent presence in Altair space within days of the Zephyrian withdrawal. Human ships began patrolling the system to prevent any return of hostile forces, while Admiral Stone worked with the surviving Altair governments to coordinate reconstruction efforts. The message to the galaxy was clear: humanity would protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Dr. Sam Rodriguez led medical teams to the devastated Altair worlds, working around the clock to treat survivors of the orbital bombardment. The human doctor had learned enough about Altair biology to provide effective medical care, and he trained Altair medical personnel in human techniques that could save lives using limited resources. Chief Engineer Ryan Brooks coordinated the massive reconstruction effort needed to rebuild Altair civilization. Human industrial technology, designed for building colonies on hostile worlds, proved perfect for repairing the damage caused by Zephyrian bombardment. Within months, new cities were rising from the ashes of the old ones, but the most significant change was happening throughout the galaxy, as other species began re-evaluating their relationships with aggressive empires. The footage from Altair Prime had shown everyone what happened when evil was allowed to operate without interference, and many civilizations decided they could no longer remain neutral bystanders. The Traders Consortium, which maintained the galaxy's primary database of species classifications, hastily reclassified humanity from Category for peaceful isolationists to Category 1, Major. Military power with interventionist policies. The change sent shockwaves through diplomatic circles as empires that had never considered humans a factor in their planning suddenly realized they needed to account for possible human intervention in their activities. Captain Jake Morrison and the crew of the New Horizon were welcomed as heroes when they finally reached Earth months later. Their decision to risk everything for unknown aliens had triggered a series of events that changed the balance of power throughout known space. Jake found himself addressing the Colonial Council about the lessons humanity had learned during their first major encounter. With galactic politics, we discovered that the galaxy is full of good people who are too afraid to stand up for what's right, Jake told the assembled representatives. The Altair species spent 3,000 years being good neighbors to everyone they met, but when they needed help, no one came to their aid until we showed up. The Colonial Council voted to establish the Human-Altair Alliance, the first interspecies partnership based on mutual defense rather than trade agreements or territorial arrangements. The Alliance Charter stated that both species would come to each other's aid if either was threatened by external forces, regardless of the odds or costs involved. Other peaceful species began approaching Earth with requests for similar arrangements. The Kepler Federation, a group of scientific worlds that had been paying tribute to aggressive empires for decades, asked if humanity would be willing to guarantee their independence. The Centauri Republic, which had been living in fear of Zephyrian expansion, offered to share their advanced shield technology in exchange for human protection. Dr. Lisa Hayes found herself appointed as Earth's first ambassador for interspecies relations, tasked with negotiating these new alliances and establishing diplomatic protocols for humanity's growing role in galactic affairs. Lisa approached the job with the same scientific curiosity she had brought to studying alien energy signatures, except now she was studying the complex relationships between dozens of different species. Fleet Commander Vextar returned to Zephyrian space to face a court-martial for his failure at Altair Prime. During his testimony, he tried to explain to his superiors that humanity represented a completely new type of opponent that their traditional tactics couldn't handle. The humans fought not for territory or resources, but for principles that made them unpredictable and extremely dangerous. They risk their lives for complete strangers, Vextar told the military tribunal. They share their technological advantages freely with their allies. They don't follow the normal patterns of conquest and expansion that we've learned to expect from other species. Traditional military doctrine is useless against opponents who prioritize the welfare of others over their own survival. The Zephyrian Empire's response to their defeat was to begin a massive military buildup designed to counter the human threat. But they soon discovered that other empires were doing the same thing, leading to an arms race that consumed resources without actually improving anyone's security. The simple act of human intervention had destabilized the entire system of galactic politics. Meanwhile, the reconstruction of Altair civilization continued with human assistance. New cities incorporated both Altair architectural traditions and human engineering techniques, creating communities that were more beautiful and more resilient than anything either species had built alone. The partnership became a model for how different species could work together while maintaining their unique cultural identities. Commander Lisa Parks was promoted to Admiral and given command of the new Altair Defense Fleet, a joint human-Altair force designed to protect the system from any future attacks. The fleet incorporated the best technology from both civilizations, creating warships that were more advanced than anything either species could have built independently. Ben Carter, the communications officer who had first intercepted Altair distress calls, established the Galactic Emergency Response Network, a communications system that allowed any species to call for help during humanitarian crises. The network was monitored by volunteers from dozens of worlds, ensuring that no one would have to face genocide alone again. The galaxy slowly realized that humanity's greatest strength wasn't their technology or their tactical abilities, but their willingness to sacrifice for others even when it served no practical purpose. This made them simultaneously the most trusted allies and the most feared enemies in known space. Species that treated their neighbors well found themselves welcomed into the growing network of human-protected worlds. Those that continued to prey on weaker civilizations discovered that humanity had a very long memory and an unlimited willingness to travel vast distances to settle moral debts. Years after the Battle of Altair Prime, Captain Morrison was invited to speak at the first Galactic Peace Conference, where representatives from over 100 species gathered to discuss new frameworks for interspecies relations. Jake looked out at the assembled delegates and realized that the decision his crew had made to help unknown aliens had created ripple effects that were still spreading throughout the galaxy. We didn't set out to change galactic politics, Jake told the conference. We just couldn't live with ourselves if we did nothing while good people were being murdered. But I think that's the point. Sometimes doing the right thing isn't about having a plan or knowing what the consequences will be. Sometimes it's just about refusing to let evil win, because it seems easier than fighting. The conference established new protocols for humanitarian intervention and mutual defense that were based largely on principles that humanity had demonstrated at Altair Prime. The galaxy was finally learning that civilized behavior required civilized people to stand up for those who couldn't protect themselves. Fleet Commander Vextar, now serving as a military advisor after his court-martial, was asked to brief the Zephyrian High Command about the long-term implications of human involvement in galactic affairs. His assessment was both simple and terrifying from the Empire's perspective. The humans have fundamentally changed the rules of the game, Vextar reported. The age of unopposed conquest is over. Any species that commits atrocities against civilian populations will eventually face human intervention, regardless of distance or military odds. The galaxy will never be the same.